clutches of a bone-deep chill. Flyleaf was 16, with wavy, untamed hair she dyed a fiery shade of orange, and eyes the color of a coconut husk. She wore a tight electric blue t-shirt, black tapered jeans, and a choker studded with short silver spikes. It was hot when I brewed it an hour ago. She had been working for the eccentric recluse for 2 years and had learned to navigate his moods. The fire's still going. I'll make more. Never mind. Solon flung his head back and poured the coffee down his throat. Your coffee is only slightly worse when it's cold, like being transferred from Alcatraz to Siberia. Doorbell sounded. It was exceptional. Her name was Esme, though no one but another gossip witch was allowed to call a gossip witch by name. She wore a gleaming crystal teardrop on a chain around her neck. I hope we haven't interrupted, Esme said. Solon watched the candlelight playing off the young witch's neck. He was taller than most of the gossip witches, but Esme had several inches on him. I gave you 3 damselflies yesterday, he said. That buys me at least a day without your persecution. The witches glanced at each other, sculpted eyebrows raised. Their beads swarmed in busy circles. We are not here presently to collect, the oldest of them said. The lines on her face were mesmerizing, pretty, like a strong wind on a sand dune. We bring news, Esme said. The girl will arrive shortly. How long will it take you to prepare her? I've never met Eureka, Solon shrugged. Even if she's not as stupid as she probably is, these things take time. Solon, Esme fingered the charm on her necklace. We want to go home. We won't wait forever. Flyleaf had heard Solon grumble about being indebted to these beasts, obliging their incessant requests for winged creatures from his butterfly hall. What did they do with the fluttering dragonflies and damselflies, the regal monarchs and occasional blue morpho butterflies that he bestowed on them in small glass jars? Judging from the witches' hungry eyes when they snatched the jars and slipped them in their pockets, Flyleaf imagined it was something terrible. What's your problem, Frizzball? The middle witch's forked tongue flicked at Flyleaf. All Flyleaf's life, her elders had warned her about Eureka. They had lived in these mountains since the great floodwaters receded millennia ago. They possessed a murky, collective memory of Atlantis and a fear that another flood would someday come. Was it actually going to happen now, before Flyleaf had climbed the Eiffel Tower or learned to drive a stick shift or fallen in anything resembling love? Are Eureka's tears really as powerful as they are said to be? She asked the witches. The witches looked at one another with amethyst-lined eyes. She thinks we know everything, the oldest witch said. I wonder why. Because, Flyleaf said, you're prophets. It is Solon's task to ready her, the eldest said. Take up your fear of mortality with him. If he can't prepare the girl, your boss will owe us his cave, his possessions, all those pretty little butterflies. Solon will owe us his life. Esme's eyes darkened, and in a sudden, terrifying voice she said, he will even owe us his death. Thank you. Waterfall and where Teardrop started and how it ended up here, and I'll talk a little bit about Fallen, and then I will see what you guys want to talk about. So I was in the end of Rapture, which is the last book in Fallen, has a scene, a very important scene at the end that takes place in Turkey. And I got to go to Turkey to do some research for that book, and while I was there, I ended up in this underwater shipwreck museum. It was the coolest museum I've ever been to in my life. Artifacts from 4,000 years ago washed up on the shores of Uluburu, Turkey, and they were fantastically preserved because they've been under the sea for thousands of years. The one that stopped me in my tracks was this tiny bronze vial about this big called a lacrimatory. It is a tear catcher.
and I'd never heard of this before, but they have been found around the world in lots of civilizations for thousands of years and used as recently as the Civil War. Women, when their guy was going off to war to fight the battles, would cry it to them and give them as a present to him so that he would know how much he was going to be missed. And I thought that was really weird and romantic, and I loved the idea that a girl could have tears powerful enough perhaps to save a soldier's life, to see him through a battle and bring him back home to her. And that it could always be something tangible that he could hold on to remind him what he was fighting for. But there was this bittersweetness to it because it was all wrapped up in how painful the separation was. I wanted to get to the place where I could write about tears powerful enough to save a life, stored inside a tiny vial. But I didn't know whose voice was going to tell that story. I didn't know whose tears could matter that much. And I was waiting for a while to find Eureka. And then one day I was crying, and it was something really lame and embarrassing. I won't tell you what. I was trying to convince my husband that it was actually the end of the world, what I was crying over, and he had the gall not to believe me. And we got in this argument about it, and my tears they were really embarrassing to me. They felt like this wall between us because all he wanted me to do was stop crying and get over it, and all I wanted him to do was recognize how grave the situation was, and looking back, that's really ridiculous. But I wanted it very badly at the time. And at a certain point in this argument we were having, he stopped and he took his pointer finger and he reached toward me. He pressed it to the corner of my eye, and he caught that tear that was building, about to go down my cheek. And he brought it between us, and we stared at it for a moment and wondered what would happen next, at least I did. And he brought it to his eye, and he pressed it to his eye, and he blinked. And I saw my tear get absorbed into his eye, and it connected us. We didn't have to say anything after that. I knew he understood me. I knew he felt what I was feeling. When I tell this story, I told it a day or two ago to a group of students. There were a lot of guys in the class, and I looked out, and they all looked like they just wanted to absolutely vomit. And the girls were like, wow. So this is a polarizing tale, but instantly I knew this was the introduction between Eureka and Ander, the guy who would matter to her, and the girl who had the most powerful tears in the universe. Only instead of it being this weird, romantic, connective gesture to say, I'm with you, I feel for you, I understand you, it was also, in Eureka's case, essential for Ander to prevent her tears from hitting the ground. And if any of you have dipped into Teardrop yet, you know why. Her tears cannot hit the ground. So that was the beginning, this tear scene, and I was writing towards the end in Waterfall, where the lacrimatory with these powerful tears would be spilled, and we'll see what the fallout of that is. I'm very glad this book is out because there's something so difficult about shouldering the weight of a story all by yourself as the writer. It begins to become just this enormous thing. And once I release it into the universe, into the hands of readers, I know that as you all pick it up and as you all find it, you absorb it into your lives in this way that I guess, I don't know, takes some of the burden off of me. It feels really lovely to know that the books, I think, that find us at the right time matter to us, not just because of what's on the page, what the author intended, what the story says it's about. They matter to us because of what we are going through, which vacation we might be on, who bought the book for us and told us we had to read it. Did we stay up all night the night before and flunk our math test the next day? And I think that all the stories that we remember as being our favorites, we remember because they have anecdotes that are very personal to us. And I love the idea of hearing about my readers' own journeys as they absorb these stories. I guess I want to tell you guys some secret, exciting news. Some of you probably know that Fallen is being adapted for the big screen and is coming out next year. I just talked to the producers yesterday, and the editing and all of that is almost probably like 90% finished, and I get to see it at the end of this month. The only things that are left to do are the score, the music, which is really essential, obviously, will make a really big difference. So I'm going to get to go to watch the orchestra play to match the scenes, which I'm really thrilled about. And then the final piece is the last few bits of special effects. We've done something really special with the wings, and it's taking a long time to get it right. But once we do, I know it's going to be spectacular. A lot of people want to know how I feel about the movie, if it's been nerve-wracking or a positive experience, and it's really been both. Fallen was optioned for film the day that it came out, so it's been almost 6 years since the process began. It's been a very long time, and a lot of things have changed. A lot of people have come and gone in working on the project. And for a long time, I was miserable, and I hated the direction that it was moving in. And I felt so strange because I couldn't say much, I guess, to the readers. And when I did, I would just kind of put a fake smile on and say, yeah, I think it's going to be good. I read a lot of really bad scripts. I said no to a number of things that just felt like moving so far away from the book I didn't recognize it anymore. And then 2 years ago, in November, Scott Hicks was hired. He's the director. And from that moment, everything changed. And he has just sailed our ship in the right direction. From the moment he came on, he got it. I think he cared about the same things that I cared about, which in turn I think are the same things that most of my readers care about. The chemistry between Addison, who's playing Luce, and Jeremy, who's playing Daniel, and then the chemistry between Addison and Harrison, who's playing Cam, are so different, and both of them are so palpable and visceral that it's just magic. I had a great time when I went to visit the set in March and April, and I'm just really, really excited and really optimistic. So I hope you guys are excited too, and I hope very soon I'll be able to share the trailer and all of that exciting stuff. What kind of things would you guys like to know? Who has a question? Yeah.
So, just quick question. Do you have any, well, I have two questions. First being, do you have any idea of when a trailer might drop?
I don't yet. I know we are planning to have the movie finished by February. And so at that point, it would be the time to gather the clips for the trailer. But it will really depend on the distributor's decision about the marketing and things that I have no idea about. But I will learn about very soon. Yeah, I know it's been a long time to wait for me too.
Yeah.
And as soon as they keep me quite tight-lipped about a lot of things, but as soon as I'm able to share anything, I will.
And then second question, completely different subject, but advice for writers who tend to be very lazy.
Lazy writers, I feel you. I think when we are lazy as writers, it is a kind of disguised writer's block. Because when you're feeling inspired and really committed to your story, nothing can keep you from that story. Nothing can keep you from getting to your computer or getting to your notebook and shutting the door on the world and diving into it. I think that, people always used to say to me, this is the most standard advice, I'm sure you've gotten it before. People always say, write every day. I don't know about that. That never worked for me. People would say, even if it's just 15 minutes, just get yourself into the chair, get in the exercise, get in the practice of committing yourself to that every day. And I found that, when I was starting to write, I was either a very busy student or I was working full-time, and sometimes all I had was 15 minutes, and I would do it. I would sit down there, I would pump out a page or whatever, and 95% of them really sucked. For me, at the beginning, a lot of it was only sitting down when I had 2, 3, 4 hours and a big burst of inspiration. I can't write like that anymore because inspiration doesn't come as often as I need it to come to finish a book. I've realized that you have to generate inspiration yourself. It comes externally from whatever it is that inspires you, music, history, other novels. I like to eavesdrop on couples having arguments. That's my favorite part. I have followed many an arguing couple out of a restaurant and around the corner just to hear what nasty things they'll say to each other, so I can put them in my books. But you can't just get inspired all the time. You have to sometimes sit down in your chair and make yourself get inspired. I would try some writing exercises, maybe. There's a great book called The Art of Writing by John Gardner. I think that's the title. I know that's the author, John Gardner, that has like several hundred really cool writing exercises that you can just sit down if you feel like it for half an hour and do a character sketch in an interesting way. Or, you know, I like the writing exercise about the barn. Have you guys ever heard of this, the barn exercise? It's like you take a picture of a barn and you describe the barn from the point of view of 3 people who are feeling something completely different. So like somebody whose mom just died, somebody who's just fallen in love, somebody who just got into like the college of their dreams. And you color it. You see how different the same image is as seen from the point of view of people who are feeling really different things. And it helps, doing that exercise helped me to learn how much description is really important in my novels, and I think description is always colored through a certain lens of a person's identity. Just like I was saying about our favorite books, they always are colored by who we are and what we want and what we need. I would try writing exercises. I would make yourself write when you're not inspired. I would finish all of the stories that you start. That's a thing that I never used to do when I first started to write. I'd write a page. Sometimes I'd write 5 pages. Sometimes I'd write 20 pages of a story. I'd always get stuck. I'd never know how it ended, and I'd give up, and I'd go on to the next one. I really had to learn how to finish, so that when I got to the same point in the novel, I get to that same point in every novel. I want to quit. I think it sucks. No one's ever going to want to read it, and I almost don't finish every single novel I ever start. But I remember the advice that I got from an old writer friend named Mo, who said, you finish every book, because just so that you know you can do it the first time, and then you already know you can do it every time after that. It's really important to finish. Any other questions?
Team Cam or Daniel?
Cam, the bad boy, the devil, is based on my husband. So I'm obviously Team Cam. I know that, I think I have a lot of girls who are like, why couldn't Luce should have ended up with Cam? I'm like, if you like Cam so much, that's why I saved him for us. Luce has Daniel. You have Cam. Cam is my favorite. I was really nervous. I was more nervous about who was cast as Cam in the film than I was about Luce and Daniel.
I'm nervous about that too.
And I am so pumped about Harrison. He is amazing. He's such a great actor. He's so sexy and very good. When I met him, I was just like, ah. And I came home, and I really wanted my husband to meet him because he is very closely. Some of my characters start out being inspired by real people in my life. Like Cam is my husband, and so I really wanted the two of them to meet. It didn't quite happen, but I think my husband was a little jealous by how much I loved the new Cam, my husband 2.0. Somebody else sort of had a question. Yes, right there.
How did you did you see the ending of the Fallen series, or did you build it as you went along?
I thought I knew the ending of the Fallen series. I thought there was this one thing that was going to happen, that was going to be the big reveal and be shocking and all of that, and that would be the climax. And I knew that from a distance back. Like I guess probably as I was writing Fallen. I didn't even know how many books it was going to be, but I knew in the end there was this thing that would happen. And it's funny because that thing happened, it did, but when I got there I was like, that doesn't matter. That's not that's not the climax. That's just a part of the story. And that really surprised me. I had to write the ending many times because I had to go so much deeper than I expected to, or than I wanted to, I guess, because it was hard and painful and scary to write some of the stuff that I had to write at the end of Rapture. And each time, I would try once and it was like way off. I tried again, it was like a little closer. And I remember talking to my editor about it. It was like right around Christmas Eve of whatever year, 2011. And she was just telling me, like, you've got to go down there and stay there and don't come up and do this the right way. You're just kind of trying to float around the surface. And I said, okay. And I shut the door. I was at my mother-in-law's house in Arkansas, and nobody saw me for Christmas. I kind of just missed it. And I went down there, and I did it, and it shocked me, and I wept. And all of this other stuff came out that I wasn't expecting. That once I really let the characters determine how it was going to go, they took control in a way that I hadn't known was going to happen. Things that I didn't know mattered, and the same thing happened with Waterfall, actually. There was like the thing that I thought mattered. It happened, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, and about the ending, it very much broke my heart. And so, how did you decide exactly to do it that way? And I want to know more about what happened with Cam.
Oh.
Because I feel like that was a little open-ended.
A little bit, huh? I'm glad and I'm sorry that it broke your heart. That's a success. I don't know. I didn't plan on it. I didn't plan on that happening. It just seemed like the only possibility when I got there. And again, I had to do it several times. And each time I would go back and I would look through the rest of the book for clues on what the ending was supposed to be. And I found them there. I was surprised by that I think there's a lot of work that our subconscious is doing in like a first draft. I don't never know what my books are about when I'm writing the first draft. I have no clue what's happening, what it means, what it's all adding up to. It seems like it's just a big chaotic mess. But going back in the second time and looking at some of the seeds that grow and turn into something else at the end of the book, it's always there. I just have to figure out how to find it. So, I don't know, I think there's something inexplicable and almost magical about that discovery process. At the end of a book or wherever it happens in the book, when you kind of veer away from your plans because your characters need to go a different way. Cam, I think about Cam all the time. He's my favorite. I don't know. I'd never say I'll never explore more about Cam. I do think a lot about him, but I'm not sure what his destiny is yet. Yes?
What inspired the Fallen novels?
What inspired the Fallen novels? I was in graduate school. I was getting a master's in fiction, and I was working on another novel. It was actually my second novel. My first and second novels that I ever wrote both completely sucked and will never see the light of day. And I was finishing that one because my friend told me to finish it, even though you know it's terrible. And I was taking, like, the last class I took for my degree was looking at the Bible as literature. So, like, we unpacked the stories of Genesis the way that you do look at the Great Gatsby in an English class. And the first day of class, this wonderful, inspirational divinity scholar who was teaching it, who mattered so much to me as I was writing Fallen, she said, she read Genesis 6:14. The line is, the sons of God, so these are the angels up in heaven, looked down at earth and saw the daughters of man, this is us, sexy ladies, and thought that they were beautiful. And my professor suggested, she pointed us to another reference in Psalms, another reference in Isaiah, and she suggested maybe probably, she thought, the reason that Lucifer and the fallen angels were kicked out of heaven was because of that attraction. Because for a moment they placed something above their adoration of God. God was not cool with that. God was like, get out. And the idea that these angels had to sacrifice their place in heaven, their role in the universe, their angelic identities seemed so tragic to me, and like such an enormous sacrifice, that I am a hopeful romantic, and I wanted to tell the story of the girl who made that sacrifice worthwhile. I did not want it to be a waste because it was so big and so important. So I found Luce. She was slow to come to me in the same way that Eureka was. I kind of just had to wait for her voice to arrive. And when it did, I realized quickly that she had to be, there had to be more to her than met the eye. She had to have a depth and complexity that made her a good match for somebody like Daniel. And that's where I found her history, her past lives, the reincarnation that deepens her love story with Daniel. And that was the beginning. The rest of it spun out from there. And I didn't know it was going to be as many books as it was. I didn't know the story would take that long. But I think having that backbone of the Bible and these extra biblical texts that have a lot of strange and wonderful angel references, that research that I got to do with this divinity scholar kept me interested for the number of books, for 5 books.
Which is your favorite, like, out of the series, which is your favorite of all of your books?
I think each book that I write is better than the one before, and I hope I always think that. I mean, I guess if you get to a point where you think, oh, my best book was like a decade ago, 5 books ago, like, probably need to switch gears and like take up painting or something. I don't know. But I do feel at the moment that Waterfall is my strongest work. I think the story is kind of story and writing are kind of at their peak for me at the moment. So in that sense, out of all of the Fallen books, Rapture is my favorite, and out of these books, Waterfall is my favorite. I'm working on a new book right now that I hate first drafts so much. I don't know if I've said that already here, but I loathe them, and I am miserable when I'm writing them, and I make everyone around me miserable when I'm writing them. So right now I have just finished this draft, and I am like a little bit into the revision process, which I love. I love the revision process. I love making the books better. That's when my books begin to make sense and soar and do cool things and come together. So right now I kind of hate that book. But I hope and I believe, because this has been the same process for me with every one of the books, by the time it's finished, I hope it'll be my favorite.
Building off that question, so I'm not a big editing fan. How do you do editing that makes it fun? Like, and just how do you do it in general?
Well, I think you can't be afraid to be ruthless. Often, and writers, I hear people say this all the time, and it's still really difficult. You know, often the paragraphs and the pages and the scenes that we love the most are not right for the book. They're not doing. They're kind of too precious to be doing the work that they need to. What helps me initially is perspective, which is just like time away from the thing. I need a break. I need to take like a month off and do something else and write something else, or come and do what I'm doing right now and talk to readers and get inspiration. Space and time away from the thing is the first step, because you could, but it's hard for me to edit right on top of the writing. I've got to like get away from it. Having another reader, give you some feedback is another great way to get perspective. I mean, for me at this point, I have a great relationship with my editor, and she reads things and she gives me like a 20-page letter on everything that's wrong with it, which I actually love. But if you don't have an editor, you can find anybody else who you trust to read your work and help you There's a difference between people who want to read your work and tell you what they think it should be, and people who want to read your work and tell you what they think you want it to be. That's a fine line, but I think you've got to find some good readers who you trust, who can give you some response and it's really about asking questions, like, this character that you introduced in chapter 2 is so great, and then I don't see her again until chapter 20. What's she up to? Where's she been? Can you bring her back? When that happens, it's like, I didn't even know that character was absent for 300 pages, and when I inject her back into this scene with my main character, it completely changes the dynamic. It opens up the scene in a new and really important way, and then I've got to explore that path. I think things like that, where you go back in and you kind of just explode the scene and figure out what still matters about it and figure out what new direction it needs to take you in, those are the fun steps in revision. It's kind of like moving into a new house. Like, it's the unpacking. At first you're like, I can handle this, this is okay. Like, then it's got to just explode and get awful before it gets better. Sometimes with revision it feels like it's never going to come back together, but it does. Slowly you bring everything back and it begins to make a whole lot more sense.
Okay, so in Fallen, whenever Daniel and Luce first meet, he flips her off. He could have just flat out ignored her, but I want to know why you made him flip her off. Is there a reason behind that? I mean, great scene, I love it. I like sticky note parts of my favorite book, and that was my first.
Oh, cool! That's really cool. I will tell you how that scene happened. Luce and I were at war when we first started this book. I didn't get her. I could not get down in the trenches with her, and I knew I needed to get closer to her. But the day I started to write Fallen, like the day I wrote the epilogue to Fallen, which is like a flashback to a past life in Helston, England, it's just this romantic moment. I wrote that scene and I was happy with it, and that night my husband, my boyfriend at the time, proposed to me, okay? So suddenly I'm getting married and I'm like in la-la, gooey girl land, planning a wedding, being all romantic, everything's great.
The lacrimatory with these powerful tears would be spilled, and we'll see what the fallout of that is. I'm very glad this book is out because there's something so difficult about shouldering the weight of a story all by yourself as the writer. It begins to become just this enormous thing. And once I release it into the universe, into the hands of readers, I know that as you all pick it up and as you all find it, you absorb it into your lives in this way that I guess, I don't know, take some of the burden off of me. It feels really lovely to know that the books, I think, that find us at the right time matter to us, not just because of what's on the page, what the author intended, what the story says it's about. They matter to us because of what we are going through, which vacation we might be on, who bought the book for us and told us we had to read it. Did we stay up all night the night before and flunk our math test the next day? And I think that all the stories that we remember as being our favorites, we remember because they have anecdotes that are very personal to us. And I love the idea of hearing about my readers' own journeys as they absorb these stories. I guess I want to tell you guys some secrets.
And completely different subject, but advice for writers who are very lazy.
Lazy writers, I feel you. I think when we are lazy as writers, it is a kind of disguised writer's block. Because when you're feeling inspired and really committed to your story, nothing can keep you from that story. Nothing can keep you from getting to your computer or getting to your notebook and shutting the door on the world and diving into it. I think that, you know, people always used to say to me, this is the most standard advice, I'm sure you've gotten it before. People always say, write every day. I don't know about that. That never worked for me. People would say, you know, like, even if it's just 15 minutes, just get yourself into a chair, get in the exercise, get in the practice of committing yourself to that every day. And I found that, you know, when I was starting to write, I was either a very busy student or I was working full-time, and sometimes all I had was 15 minutes, and I would do it. I would sit down there, I would pump out a page or whatever, and 95% of them really sucked. For me, at the beginning, a lot of it was only sitting down when I had 2, 3, 4 hours and a big burst of inspiration. I can't write like that anymore because inspiration doesn't come as often as I need it to come to finish a book. I've realized that you have to generate inspiration yourself. It comes externally from whatever it is that inspires you, music, history, other novels. I like to eavesdrop on couples having arguments. That's my favorite one. I have followed many an arguing couple out of a restaurant and around the corner just to hear what nasty things they'll say to each other. So I've put them in my books. But you can't just get inspired all the time. You have to sometimes sit down in your chair and make yourself get inspired. I would try some writing exercises, maybe. There's a great book called The Art of Writing by John Gardner. I think that's the title. I know that's the author, John Gardner, that has like several hundred really cool writing exercises that you can just sit down if you feel like it for half an hour and do a character sketch in an interesting way. Or, you know, I like the writing exercise about the barn. Have you guys ever heard of this, the barn exercise? It's like you take a picture of a barn and you describe the barn from the point of view of 3 people who are feeling something completely different. So like somebody whose mom just died, somebody who's just fallen in love, somebody who just got into like the college of their dreams. And you color it. You see how different the same image is as seen from the point of view of people who are feeling really different things. And it helps, doing that exercise helped me to learn how much description is really important in my novels, and I think description is always colored through a certain lens of a person's identity. Just like I was saying about our favorite books, they always are colored by who we are and what we want and what we need. I would try writing exercises. I would make yourself write when you're not inspired. I would finish all of the stories that you start. That's a thing that I never used to do when I first started to write. I'd write a page. Sometimes I'd write 5 pages. Sometimes I'd write 20 pages of a story. I'd always get stuck. I'd never know how it ended, and I'd give up, and I'd go on to the next one. I really had to learn how to finish so that when I got to the same point in the novel, I get to that same point in every novel. I want to quit. I think it sucks. No one's ever going to want to read it. And I almost don't finish every single novel I ever start. But I remember the advice that I got from an old writer friend named Mo, who said, you finish every book, because just so that you know you can do it the first time, and then you already know you can do it every time after that. It's really important to finish. Any other questions? Grab her and throw her up against the wall and make out with her, compared to like what he knew he had to do, which was turn the other way. That was so fierce that he just acted like a lunatic and flipped her the bird. And I had to write it from Daniel's point of view first before I could understand how Luce would interact. And when I wrote Daniel's scene, I was kind of laughing, and then I just put that scene aside, and I got there, and I looked at it from Luce's point of view and wrote. It was much easier for me then. Seeing what Daniel saw of her when she first walked into the school, I could get into her. I could kind of see, this is what she's like, this is why, you know, her shoes are untied because she's so nervous she didn't remember to tie them. You know, those kind of things that the person you love most in the world would notice about you, but nobody else would. But when I wrote it from Lucinda's point of view, it was more heartbreaking. I mean, it was awful to write, to see that from her point of view. But yeah, it was the only thing that felt right
That was one of the things I was like, you get that in the movie. They need to see that. Yes.
Is that piece of mail going to be available everywhere?
It is, actually.
I feel like I've actually read it somewhere.
Yeah. I wrote it. It was included as a deleted scene, maybe online, when, I think maybe when Torment came out, I don't remember. But now it is available, and there's an e-book collection that might be turned into paper at some point. Right now it's an e-book collection called Angels in the Dark, which you can get. It has that one and maybe like 8 other stories that are the same kind of thing. Any more questions? Okay, awesome. Well, obviously.